Hey folks, it's the holiday season, right here by Virtual Roaring Fire, in my current favorite VR headset, the Quest 3. I wanted to tell you a little bit about some holiday deals that are going on for both hardware and software across the MetaQuest line. So let's say you're looking for your very first VR headset, and you don't want to commit to a $500 purchase. The MetaQuest 2, which I think is still a very capable headset, I've played the latest titles like Asgard's Wrath 2 and Assassin's Creed Nexus on it, is still currently available, and it's available at the cost of $249.99 for the 128GB model, or $299.99 for the 256GB model. Now, with the size of some of the games that are coming out, for example, Asgard's Wrath 2 is 32 gigabytes. That's already taking up a sizable chunk of space. I believe there's around 104 gigabytes available after the system storage in the 128 gigabyte model. So with games that size, you're really only getting 3 on there. So I would commit to that extra $50 if you can. And the other option that you have is always to look for people that may be selling their Quest 2 device. I would absolutely encourage, if you are buying a used device or a device that's been refurbished, that you test it out first, or you get some form of guarantee with it. But you might be able to get an even better deal than the buy it new prices that are available right now. This $249.99 and $299.99 deal is available through meta.com. It's also available through a number of other retailers around the world as well. Again, I'm going to be doing everything in United States dollar prices. Prices do vary around the world. Maybe you've been in VR for a while and you're interested in upgrading your headset, or you want that top-notch experience and you're not afraid to commit. For $499.99, you can pick up the MetaQuest 3, which has upgraded visuals in some games, as well as an upgraded microprocessor, upgraded mixed reality pass-through, and upgraded controllers. Like, this thing's upgraded in all the areas that you'd want it to be. It's lighter, it's got pancake optics, it's got a lot of value added over the $249.99 price point of the Quest 2. But it doesn't really deliver that different of an experience when you're using it for games and apps when you're in those games and apps. So outside of some small graphics tweaks, and in some cases a resolution bump, the Quest 2 and Quest 3 right now are kind of on par on the software library. It's the hardware that counts, and you're paying a bit more for a lot more hardware. The other thing that's cool about the Quest 3 right now is if you pick it up before, I believe it's January 24th, 2024, you get a copy of Asgard's Wrath 2, which is a $60 value, and has been named 10 out of 10 by IGN, has over 100 hours of gameplay with the side quests and a repeatable, never-ending dungeon mode, as well as fishing and slingshot games. Like, there's so much. The more I play this game, the more that I find is available in the game. So for $59.99, you're picking up a great game. You get that included for free if you pick up any Quest 3 model. The 128 gigabyte model is $499.99. If you upgrade to the 512 gigabyte model for $649.99, in addition to that free copy of Asgard's Wrath 2, you also get 6 months of MetaQuest Plus, which gives you 2 games for free as curated by Meta on a monthly basis. So you basically be getting 12 games for the life of your subscription, and then if you renew that subscription, you can continue playing those games as well as picking up new games every month, 2 more games. So it's a pretty good deal. If you like MetaQuest Plus, or if you're new to VR and you haven't tried a lot of titles, MetaQuest Plus gives you pretty decent, usually one very popular game and one kind of hidden gem from the Quest library, and you'd get those for free for the first 6 months, which is really cool. Let's say you're all about social interactions in virtual reality. The MetaQuest Pro is probably your best choice at this point. They recently upgraded their facial tracking to include basically all aspects of your face, including your teeth and tongue. You've got eye tracking. You've got the best-in-class controllers with the Touch Pro controllers, and the best black levels as well in a current Quest device. I find the comfort to be a bit better as well in the MetaQuest Pro. I know pros and cons, so I don't want to say it's going to be the most comfortable device out of the box for you, as everyone's head shape is different. But I love my Quest Pro, and especially if you're looking for deep social interactions with facial tracking, with eye tracking, it's got everything that you want in it covered. And it's currently $999.99. So that was a look at the hardware that's available on sale right now. Let's take a look at the software. The Quest Holiday Sale, the reason why I wanted to make this video in the first place was this started a couple of days ago, and I looked at this and I was like, wow, there's some really good deals here. So I wanted to socialize this because I don't know how much socialization this sale is actually going to get. And these deals are on games that I love. So I'm going to go through the whole thing, but I'm going to actually kind of spotlight the ones that I think are some of the best titles that you can get in this sale and some of the best price points that you can get in the sale. So we're starting out with Warplanes Battle Over Pacific. It's a 40% off deal, making it $11.99. Not one of my favorite titles. It is like a dogfighting simulator. It is, I believe, the second or third in a series where you're piloting a warplane. No More Rainbows is a lot of fun, 30% off at $13.99. Uses kind of the gorilla tag natural movement mechanics where you're using your arms to drag you forward. I can't get into those types of games because my arms don't really move me forward. I don't know, I just can't get the control mechanics down well for it. But if you're into those types of games, Gorilla Tag being one of the most popular games out there, No More Rainbows as a platformer is top-notch using that type of mechanic. Yupitergrad is 40% off. This one is a really fun, kind of Spider-Man-esque plunger with tether pooler adventure where you're navigating through a space station and solving puzzles with these plungers that have grappling hooks, basically, that you stick to the walls and swing. It's a really fun game. It's kind of unique. It's got some fun humor. 40% off, $8.99, pretty good deal. Battle Talent is one of those games that uses physics and melee combat. I'm not super big on those. It's 15% off at $16.99. One of the games I would definitely look into picking up is Red Matter at 40% off for $14.99. This is one of the best story-driven science fiction games on the Quest platform, and it's beautiful. It is one of the most beautiful games that you can play on the Quest 2 or Quest 3, and obviously the darker scenes will have better blacks on the Quest Pro. So regardless of those three headsets that I showed you, Red Matter is a fantastic game, and for 40% off, it's a substantial discount. This is one that I would say if you don't have it, I would consider picking up as part of this sale. The Last Clockwinder is a fantastic puzzle game where you're kind of cloning yourself to solve puzzles. It's a unique gameplay loop, and it's got a pretty cool story as well. 40% off at $14.99. Star Wars Pinball VR. So I love arcade pinball machines, and I feel like the way that they built this Star Wars pinball game, they've both brought you the fun of an arcade pinball machine and also kind of the man cave of a Star Wars fan. You can customize with posters and sculptures and memorabilia as you play the Star Wars pinball machines. You can earn these different unlockables to put around the room where the pinball machine is. It's a cool game. It's probably my favorite Star Wars game so far in virtual reality, even though it's a pinball game. There are multiple tables, lots of fun, 40% off at $14.99. Another one I would definitely consider as part of this sale. Zero Caliber Reloaded is 48% off at $12.99. I am not into shooters, certainly not into zombie shooters. This isn't one that I would definitely pick up, but if you're into that type of game, 48% off is a substantial sale. One of my all-time favorite VR games is Tetris Effect Connected. It is currently 33% off at $19.99. This is a game I go back to weekly at a minimum. On Saturdays, they have events where you can unlock different avatars and things of that nature in the effects mode. And you can also play a multiplayer mode. And what I love about the multiplayer in Tetris Effect Connected is you're actually connecting with people all over the world. And there's no voice chat. There's no need to voice chat. You're figuring things out and working together. And you can see that they're playing on what platform they're playing on and what country that they're playing from. And even without words, it's like you're speaking the language of the blocks. It's I don't know, it really impacts me when I play the game, and it's fantastic. So again, this is one like Red Matter that I would definitely encourage picking up as part of this sale. PianoVision is a mixed reality piano tutor slash game. It's probably the coolest mixed reality experience I've had, the most practical mixed reality experience I've had thus far. For $8.99, it's not that big of a discount, but this is one, particularly if you're picking up a Quest 3 this holiday season, you may want to add to your library anyway, particularly if you have someone that's interested in learning a musical instrument. Whether you actually have a piano or use the virtual piano that's part of the application, it works great. And it's something that is practical for any user. Wander at 40% off is almost like a Google Earth in virtual reality for the Quest platform. It's really cool if you want to explore the world from home. I kind of find that the newer application World, WOORLD, which is similar in a lot of ways and gives you a similar 360-degree view of your surroundings from anywhere in the world, handles this a little bit better. It also has more geo-guessing games and more social interactions than Wander. But for $5.99, if you have someone that may be homebound or loves to travel but can't at the current time, this is a cool way to kind of immerse them in the landscapes of the world. Mondly Practice Languages in VR is not my favorite language learning application in VR, but if you're interested in practicing different languages or learning a specific language, maybe you're going on a trip to a foreign country, $8.99 is a good price point. Little Cities is a fantastic city builder, very similar and reminiscent of games like SimCity. I really love Little Cities. It is a fantastic game. And at 45% off, I feel like this is really a steal for $10.99. Premium Bowling does what it says on the tin. It's a bowling game. I don't know how premium I feel it is. Like, I feel like Forever Bowl is a much better bowling game for me. But if you just want a bowling game, $8.99, 55% off. Premium Bowling is one of the alternative bowling titles available on the Quest platform. Salmon Max, this time it's virtual at 50% off, $14.99. I didn't really like the Salmon Max game. Unfortunately, I was a little let down by it. It's got a series of fun mini games. If you're a beginner to VR and you love Salmon Max, that's the only time I would really consider it. Survival Nation is actually kind of an interesting game. At 40% off, it is a zombie shooter survival game, but it's got some cool multiplayer aspects. It's $17.99. It's not really my thing, but if you're into those types of survival game, and particularly if you want to play co-op, it's an interesting title at that price point. It is a little rough around the edges. It's not the perfect game, but it's not a bad price for what you get out of it. And it is kind of one of those living games where you can spend hours and hours getting lost in that world. Toss is another game that has you kind of monkeying around at $13.99 and 30% off. This is one that, again, if you're a Gorilla Tag lover and you're already the owner of No More Rainbows up here, might be one to consider. Otherwise, if you were choosing between the two, I would go with No More Rainbows for sure. The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners has a lot of those best-in-class practices built into it as a game. So if you're looking for a survival adventure game, discounting the fact that it's also kind of a zombie shooter, it's a pretty decent game. If you're a fan of The Walking Dead, definitely one I would pick up. 40% off, $23.99, great deal. The Climb 2 for $19.99, it's literally just a game where you're climbing surfaces. The Climb and the Climb 2 are very pretty games, but it's not really anything outside of climbing. If you're into rock climbing, if you're into kind of going to a rock wall or climbing mountains, literally, like, this is a great game for that. But otherwise, I feel like you get those climbing mechanics now in so many different games, in parts of those games, that it's almost like this is a one mechanic game and you get that elsewhere. So at $19.99, 33% off, it is a deal, but it's not one that I would pick up. Colossal Cave, on the other hand, the very first adventure game, essentially, for $11.99, 52% off. This one is near and dear to my heart. I have played the heck out of it in VR and on flat PC and on PlayStation 5. I really like this game. I don't know why I like it so much, but when it first came out, it was a little rough around the edges for VR. There was a lot of criticism of the VR mode. The developers, which are Ken and Roberta Williams and the team at Cygnus Entertainment, you may know Ken and Roberta Williams from their time at Sierra Online, so kind of that nostalgic trip there. This is also based on a game, the first kind of text adventure to surface into the world, Colossal Cave from the 1970s. It's a special title, and it's got some of those point-and-click elements, and it's really something that's unique, not necessarily unique in VR, but unique in general in this day and age. There's not a lot of those point-and-click style adventure games that really work in this day and age. And this one not only works, but is pretty cool and immersive in VR. There are sections of the cave that are incredibly beautiful, particularly in VR, versus just looking at it flat on a screen. So this is one that I would definitely encourage picking up and checking out in VR. 52% off is a great deal. The joke that I made on Twitter when I posted about this particular game was it's a deal so good that you may not be able to get it out of the cave and up the stairs without using a magic word. You'll get that if you play the game. Into the Radius is a very highly rated survival, again, shooter game. I personally, like I said, don't play a lot of shooters, don't really like violent shooter games. But this one is very highly rated. It's got good graphics. As it says on the screen right now, it's the Little Things update. They keep focusing on adding more and more to it, and they've recently announced a sequel coming. It is kind of a post-apocalyptic, some magic things going on, unexplained. I wouldn't say magic. I would say unexplained things going on in the world that you're dropped into. It is a cool game, and 36% off is a great deal for $18.99. Again, not one I would personally pick up, but if you're into those types of games, this one is one that you may want to consider. One I do think is worth checking out for sure, particularly if you're a comic book or a movie fan, Marvel's Iron Man VR. 40% off is a crazy, crazy deal for $17.99 for this game. I had a ton of fun with this. It's not the longest game on Earth, but you're Iron Man. You're going like this. Like, you're doing everything that Iron Man does. Lots of fun. Love this game. 40% off is a great price, one I would definitely consider picking up. Hubris has fantastic graphics, particularly on the Quest 3 now. They've upgraded the graphics to match the new chipset that allows you to push better graphics and also better frame rate. So 40% off on that game for $17.99. I don't necessarily know that it's one that I feel is a must-buy, but it's a good sale price. I feel kind of the same way about Red Matter 2. Red Matter 2, like the first game, the graphics have been upscaled for the Quest 3. It's one of the best looking games on the Quest 2 and Quest Pro as well. It's $15.99. It's a pretty good price point, 46% off. But I felt like the story in the first Red Matter was just so much better than in the second. The second one is obviously an extension of the first, but if you don't have the first game, I would play the first one and maybe even end it at the first one. The second one is a fun game, but it's just not, it didn't grab me as much as the first. Dead Hook is kind of like a Doom 3 style game. It is $13.99 at 30% off. The Stealthy Schemes bundle is one I probably wouldn't pick up. I love one of the games in it, but there are two, and the other one not kind of into. It includes I Expect You to Die 3 and Thief Simulator for $27.99, 37% off the regular price of those two games outside of the bundle. Floor Plan Remastered is a lot of fun. $4.99. This is a game where you're riding an elevator up and down to different floors and then solving puzzles, typically by pulling things in, kind of psychically or magically, force pulling things in to solve the puzzles. It's a fun one. I really like the graphics and I like the play mechanics of it, even though you're kind of confined to an elevator shaft. One of the things that is a challenge for people new to virtual reality sometimes is artificial locomotion. What I love about games like Floor Plan and the I Expect You to Die series as examples is you're not moving around. You're kind of confined to a specific space and trying to solve for things. But the environment in Floor Plan, what's unique about this game is as you go to the different floors as the elevator opens are completely different. Almost different worlds. This is a very cool game, kind of unique, and at $4.99, even though it's only $1 off the regular price, it's one that I would definitely consider as part of this sale. Did you like Rock Band or any of those drums that you could play at the arcade where you played different drum simulators and things of that nature? If so, Smash Drums is probably the game for you if you're into drums in an arcadey fashion. I can't guarantee that it would teach you to be able to play these songs on real drums, but it is a lot of fun to kind of play along to familiar songs in this particular game. It's 35% off for $12.99. Again, more so catering toward a virtual representation of those fake plastic instruments than the actual thing. There are other drum simulators like Paradiddle, which will actually teach you the mechanics of playing drums. This one's more drumming for fun. There's a few different Beat Saber packs in this sale. I think all of them are $39.99. This first one that comes up for 25% off is Beat Saber with the Imagine Dragons music pack. I'll touch on each one as I go. If you don't know what Beat Saber is, it's probably one of the most popular rhythm games in virtual reality today. That hasn't changed over the years, and they keep adding more and more song packs to it. This one includes Beat Saber with the 6 song packs and the extras that come with the game, and then also the Imagine Dragons pack. Each of these packages, which I'll touch on very briefly as we go through the sale, will include a different additional music pack. Espire 1 VR Operative is a really interesting stealth, almost Metal Gear Solid-esque game that is kind of underrated, to be honest, in virtual reality. The Keep It Casual pack has 3 games that together might be a good starter pack if you like casual style games. I already mentioned Little Cities. This one also includes Vacation Simulator, which is a fantastic game from the folks at Alchemy Labs, and Fruit Ninja VR at $39.99. That's 38% off the regular price. If you don't want one of those games, all 3 of the games are separately available in the sale, and I'll touch on the other 2 in a moment. But if you're looking for a casual games pack, all 3 of those games are pretty fun, and they may be a good starter pack for you if you're new to virtual reality. Killer Frequency is one that didn't really grab me. It is a game where you play a radio disc jockey trying to get through the night where there's a killer on the loose. You're getting phone calls and things of that nature. I don't know, something about it just did not connect with me, and there are other games that came out with similar radio disc jockey mechanics, and also with a game that came out that I really loved was Not for Broadcast VR, which had you in a television station. I don't know, Killer Frequency, maybe it's the horror elements, maybe it just didn't resonate with me. This is one I wouldn't pick up, but at 48% off, if you're into horror and you want to simulate life as a radio disc jockey in a creepy setting, $12.99 is not a bad price at 48% off. The folks at Shell Games have made fantastic titles. Almost all of them are available as part of the sale. Some of them are no longer available at all, unfortunately. But Until You Fall is a great melee combat game. It's also roguelike, if you understand that term. Like, you keep getting new weapons and new upgrades as you play the game, and when you die, some of that experience stays with you. Otherwise, you're earning new weapons and earning new things as you progress through each time you play through the game, until you fall in battle. 44% off, $13.99. If that's the type of energy that you want to expend, it's a pretty good deal for that particular game. I Expect You to Die 2, the second in the series, is 36% off at $15.99. The I Expect You to Die series, I'm just going to touch on briefly because this is the first one that's really come up, are a series of spy escape room style games. You get a number of levels. I think in the first game now there might be 12 or 13 levels. Second game has a bunch, and they have connected stories. So in the first game you have a connected story, the second game you have a connected story, the third game you have a connected story where you're escaping through each of these different puzzle escape room style things, using psychic abilities to draw objects into you. So you're, again, there's no need for locomotion. There's no need to move around. You can play this one seated very comfortably. And the music, the intro sequences, the voice acting, the puzzle mechanics, the graphics, everything about these games are great. So all 3 games are fantastic. They're all at good price points as part of this sale. If you don't have any of them, or if you have picked them up out of order, I'd pick up the first game first because it's got the most content and it's the one I love the most. But all 3 are fantastic. So definitely something to consider if you're into escape room style games, or if you want to just feel like you're James Bond. Great games. I already kind of touched on Vacation Simulator. It is one of Alchemy Labs' games that are part of this sale. Alchemy does standing in one place, hand interactions best over probably anyone in the VR space. At $23.99, 20% off. It's a pretty cool, chill title, appropriate for all ages, and a good intro to VR as well. My favorite rhythm game that came out in 2023 for virtual reality was Samba de Amigo Virtual Party. This game is based on the classic Sega Dreamcast game Samba de Amigo, or the Sega arcade game of the same name. I have spent many hours shaking my maracas in this game, and I'm honestly kind of shocked to see it at this price point already. It's got a fantastic mixed reality mode. It's got several different campaigns to play through. It's got, I believe, around 50 songs if you count the DLC expansions. It's got a ton of content for now $19.99. Man, great price point, particularly if you love Dreamcast era Sega. It's got some very cool visuals from the Sonic Adventure games, kind of grafted into this game, including some songs that you might be very familiar with as well from some of the Sega games. It's fantastic. So it's got a music library that's super diverse from all genres, essentially, of music. Great gameplay elements. It is not in any way similar to a game where you're just swinging sabers. Like, yes, you're shaking maracas, but there's a ton of little mini games that float through. Lots of difficulty levels. You can play easy to incredibly hard difficult. Like, it is great. Absolutely my favorite rhythm game in VR thus far, and at $19.99, it is a great, great price point. That one is one like Red Matter and like Little Cities and like Tetris Effect Connected that I would say I would definitely recommend picking up as part of this sale. A classic that keeps getting updated, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, is kind of like a party game where one person is in a VR headset and they're trying to defuse a bomb, and other players have this kind of bomb defusal manual. They're trying to tell you what you need to do or what you need to press to stop the bomb from exploding. They recently added a mixed reality mode, which I have not yet had the opportunity to play, but like this game continues to be built out and expanded. And it is by far, if you're looking for a game that you can play as a party game in VR, where you don't have to pass the headset around for each turn, this one's great. It's also good for team building if you have a team that you're working with, because again, you're working together to try to defuse bombs, and it's a very, very cool and interesting game. So for $7.99, 46% off. It's got my recommendation, not necessarily a must-buy in this sale, but a very cool game, and great if you have multiple players but just one VR headset. Figmin XR is probably the killer app for mixed reality. 20% off, $15.99, not necessarily the best deal, but if you're picking up particularly a Quest Pro or Quest 3 that's got that full color pass-through mode, this gives you basically the ability to create worlds on your own or create toys even as part of the many, many different tools that it gives in its application. It's got what used to be Tilt Brush baked into it. It's got GIF images that you can just place wherever you want. You can build games, you can build worlds, you can build scenes, all within this one tool. And what I love most, because I am not that creative, is you can also drop into many other users' worlds or many other users' scenes or play games that other users have created within Figmin XR. I feel like Figmin XR is probably right now the best mixed reality toy that you can buy. I don't necessarily know that it's necessarily like the best creative application for industrial uses. Really not. But if you want to play, if you want to feel a sense of creativity, or you want to feel a sense of wonder at others' creativity, Figmin XR is awesome. And again, even though the sale price is only 20% off, particularly if you're getting a Quest 3 or a Quest Pro this holiday season, this is one I'd definitely consider. Puzzling Places is a great way to relax and unwind after a troubling day. You can drop into puzzles. They've got so many awesome photogrammetry-enabled puzzles, different scenes or different 3D puzzles that you can build in a variety of numbers of pieces, from something that might take an hour to something that might take a week. 33% off at $9.99. This does not give you every puzzle. There are ongoing puzzle packs that come out each month, as well as some special packs that have come out as well in this game. But the puzzles that you get are enough to get through probably a year of making puzzles. And I love using it to unwind. It's a great title. $9.99 is a fantastic price, 33% off. This is one, again, that I would definitely recommend. Drunkn Bar Fight is another one of those kind of melee physics games. It is what it is. You're swinging your fists and throwing stuff from the bar at other patrons of the bar. There's other scenes other than a bar now, but it's a fighting sandbox. It's not really a fighting game. It's not really my thing, but if you want to do something silly with pretty decent physics, Drunkn Bar Fight, 44% off, $9.99. One that absolutely did not grab me when it came out was Thief Simulator Greenview Street. It is 30% off at $13.99. I would pass on that one. Lucky's Tale, something about the locomotion kind of makes me sick. It is literally just a almost diorama style game where you're a third person behind Lucky, which is a little fox. It's a great game if you're playing the flat game. There's flat versions of Lucky's Tale. I believe it's called Super Lucky's Tale, and maybe New Super Lucky's Tale with the follow-up. But something about the VR version over the years has continued to make myself and my wife both a little bit motion sick. So I want to just caveat that. It is a good platformer, but as it could potentially make you motion sick, I can't recommend it even at 50% off for $9.99. Beautiful graphics, top-notch gameplay. If it's something you are not prone to motion sickness and you want to check out, it's a pretty cool game. I will say the game to the right is more of a recommendation from me, and also in a similar style. After the Fall is a 4-person, 3-person, 2-person, or 1-person co-op game. It's a shooter. It's kind of got some unique mechanics that have been copied by other games, like the most recent Ghostbusters game that came out. It's 40% off. It's $17.99. If you and your friends love shooters, it's a good one to pick up. Otherwise, not for me. I'll just say that. Moss, however, at 50% off at $9.99, the same price point as Lucky's Tale. Moss does not make me motion sick, is also a third-person game where you're controlling a beautifully rendered little mouse and also using your hands to grab things and things of that nature as a ghostly spirit going through a storybook adventure. Moss and the sequel, Moss Book 2, are two of the most fantastic VR games I've played. And for $9.99 as a point of entry, I would definitely recommend picking up Moss as a title this holiday season and as part of this sale. Audio Trip is another awesome rhythm game. It's 45% off at $10.99. Again, among the rhythm games as part of the sale that I would pick up Samba de Amigo first. But if you're into rhythm games, check out Audio Trip, at least watch the trailer and see if it's something that might be right for you. If you are into games like Counter-Strike, spoiler, I am not. Pavlov Shack is as close as you can get to that in virtual reality today. It is $16.99, 15% off. This is a game that grew to popularity on both PC VR and on Quest App Lab prior to its full release on the Quest store. There's tons of mods, tons of player base. If you're into those types of shooter, this is the game that you would want to pick up. $16.99 is a really good deal for a game of its nature, but it is not the type of game I love. So it's not one that I would necessarily recommend. Tentacular's got some cool, unique mechanics. This one, I was fortunate enough to play as it was in beta. It's a Devolver Digital published game. And I played the heck out of it. It's got different magnet experiences and different things that you can do with tentacles as arms, because you play a tentacled creature. 44% off, $13.99. It's a tempting title, but not necessarily a must-buy for me as part of this sale. And I'm going to say the same thing painfully about Prison Boss VR, which is also a lot of fun. You're locked in prison and doing things like manufacturing cigarettes and smuggling and things of that nature to other prisoners. It's $11.99, 40% off. Got kind of some of the mechanics of Job Simulator and some of the mechanics of like a classic lemonade stand game where you're trying to earn money to figure out your way to escape prison. It's a fun game, but not necessarily one I'd pick up as part of this sale. Might be something that as you're growing your library and you're kind of bored, you might want to check out. It's also not the most advanced graphics or longest gameplay loop, if you will, amongst these games. So it's cool, but not necessarily one I'd say is a must-buy. I did not care for Green Hell VR. It is 50% off at $14.99. It's a survival game. It's got a pretty dedicated following, but it wasn't one that grabbed me, unfortunately. Myst is a timeless classic, similar in a lot of ways to Colossal Cave. It recently added hand tracking and a graphics update, things of that nature. $15.99, 46% off. If you've never played Myst, one to pick up. If you've played Myst and you want to revisit it, check it out. If you've played Myst and you hated it on PC for whatever reason, don't buy it again because it's kind of the same game. I do love the fact that they did add some randomization to it so that you can continue to replay Myst in VR. It also, at one point, I don't know if it still does, shipped with a special scene for your MetaQuest home as well, so you can actually like use that as your home environment. But I don't know if that still comes with it. I will say, though, 46% off is a pretty substantial price decrease for Myst, and this is, of course, just a limited time. So if it's a game that resonates with you for nostalgic reasons, or it's a game that you're looking into playing because you've heard about it, or you just want a really deep, difficult puzzle game, Myst is for you. Ghost Giant has a lot of whimsy to it. It's a shorter game. It is similar in a lot of ways to me to a game like Moss, but with more interactive elements from your larger ghost-like character, where you're navigating and helping a character through a number of scenes. $9.99, 60% off is a really good deal for this game, but again, if I had to choose between a lot of these titles, I would pick Moss up over the others in this category. Similar to Myst and similar to Colossal Cave, recently released is The Seventh Guest. The Seventh Guest in VR is fantastic. It's got really good graphics, good captures of the actors in it, and while it's reminiscent to the classic PC CD-ROM game, it's got enough differences that it is not something that you can just solve with an old walkthrough, and some things that are very unique to VR. I really enjoyed my time with this game. It's not substantially discounted, unfortunately. It's only 20% off at $23.99. This might be one that you wait for another sale, or you expand your library with at a later date, unless you're a huge, huge fan that wants to check out this title now. It's a fantastic game. And if you love puzzle games, it's great. I may even recommend it at this point over I Expect You to Die, which is scary, because I Expect You to Die as a series is one of the best escape room style, puzzle style games I've played in VR. But The Seventh Guest VR is something special. I just don't know that that price is really that substantial of a decrease when there's so many other games that I would say to pick up right now as part of this sale. Drop Dead Dual Strike Edition. Again, a zombie shooter. This one's a lot of fun, and it's really arcadey. 40% off, $8.99. I'd say it's a maybe if you like that style of game, particularly if you like arcade shooters as opposed to like PC first-person shooters. I can't really think of a good example, but You know, if you go to a arcade and play a game like House of the Dead, for example, this has very similar style mechanics. It is a ton of fun if you're into this type of game. So not going to recommend it, but substantial discount for that type of game. The Quest favorites at 37% off. If you've never played any of these games or you're new to VR, Super Hot VR, Job Simulator, and I Expect You to Die, those are definitely must-haves for your library. They are classic titles and timeless titles in virtual reality that use the best-in-class mechanics and will teach you how to be a better VR player. And the other thing is, they don't use locomotion. So they're all going to be comfortable experiences for players with any level of motion comfort. 37% off, $43.99. Again, that's for the bundle. Each individual title, if you're looking to pick one up, is also on sale as part of this particular sale. So you may want to mix and match, but pretty substantial savings for 3 great titles as part of that bundle. If you're looking for a boxing game, there's several as part of this. Thrill of the Fight is a more realistic boxing simulator that also includes some mixed reality modes now. So particularly if you have the Quest 3 or Quest Pro, you can now have full color projection of your room around you as you're boxing other fighters as part of this game or training to box fighters as part of this game. $7.99, 20% off. It is very much so a realistic boxing simulator. So if you're looking for that type of game and not an arcadey style game, this is the one for you. Outta Hand for $13.99. Not one that super grabbed me. Again, it kind of has the same locomotion as Gorilla Tag, so I couldn't really play it very well. It's 30% off at $13.99. If you're looking for that type of game, again, I would recommend No More Rainbows up above. Another Beat Saber pack, this one with the Weekend Music pack for $39.99. Broken Edge is a cool 1v1 melee combat game. This one has you swinging swords kind of until they break each round. It's almost like a duel, honestly. It's a pretty unique game mechanic. I really enjoy it. It's $9.99. If you have another player and only one other player, and you're into that type of game, 33% off, $9.99. Broken Edge is one that I would say definitely to check out. Beat Saber, again, on sale with the Linkin Park and Mike Shinoda Ultimate Bundle. That gives you a bunch of Linkin Park music and some Mike Shinoda music and some Fort Minor music as part of the bundle. That's $45.99 because it gives you a lot more extra to the game because there's a lot of songs between those 2 packs. If you're a fan of Linkin Park or a fan of Mike Shinoda's other projects, you probably want to pick this up if you've never played Beat Saber. If not, definitely consider picking up the 2 Linkin Park packs. They're both very good. Tennis Esports, I have never played. It is 33% off. I've played some cool tennis-like games. The one I would recommend at this point is Racket Club, which is recently released from the folks at Resolution Games. Another Fisherman's Tale is 40% off at $14.99. I really liked the first of Fisherman's Tale. I had some challenges with another Fisherman's Tale and never finished it. But if you've played the first game and you're looking to pick up the second to continue playing a game in that vein, 40% off is a pretty good deal. I did love Vampire the Masquerade Justice. This one has kind of a Dishonored feel to it. Or a Thief feel to it. There's different ways that you can play it. But I also like taking a bite out of people. It's a really cool atmosphere game. It's got a pretty decent storyline. And I love the stealth and kind of rapid attack, eliminate one enemy before they yell to the others to get assistance style of gameplay of this one. 30% off is a pretty decent deal for $20.99. Again, definitely not one that I would say is a must-buy up front, but a good deal for a really decent game. Demeo. If you don't already own and you're in any way interested in tabletop RPGs, or if you have friends that have interest in tabletop RPGs, is an awesome game in both virtual reality and in mixed reality now. This feels like you're playing a Dungeons and Dragons adventure, but the Dungeon Master is the game itself. It is awesome. It is $21.99 on sale for 45% off. It's one I definitely would recommend considering as part of this sale. Cosmonious High is the most recent Alchemy Labs game. It didn't grab me as much as Job Simulator or Vacation Simulator, but it's got similar mechanics and more of a story and more of a play through experience loop. It does offer unlimited gameplay, but there's more of a story than the other games that came before it. It's $23.99 on sale or 20% off. Again, if you don't have Job Simulator or Vacation Simulator, I'd probably pick up one of those before this, but a pretty good price for the game as well. Brink Traveler, similar in a lot of ways to Wander, is another one of those games that kind of gives you photorealistic images of locations on the Earth. It's 46% off or $7.99. Go back in the video a bit, you can hear all of my praise for World, WOOORLD. That's the one I'd pick up probably over either of these two titles. Ultra Wings 2, I didn't care for. It is 35% off at $12.99. If you're looking for like a Pilot Wings style flight simulator, that's basically what this is. I found it to be a bit rough around the edges, unfortunately, so it's not something that I would say is a must-buy. Breachers is a very, very popular multiplayer shooter game. I'm not into those types of games. It's 26% off or $21.99. Similar to learning how to play piano in PianoVision, you can learn how to play pretty realistic table tennis with 11 Table Tennis. This one is a hardcore table tennis simulator for 40% off, $17.99. I'm not super good at table tennis, but if you want to learn those mechanics and you want to become a good table tennis player, or you just want to play table tennis with your friends in VR, that's the game to absolutely buy for table tennis. Zombieland Headshot Fever is a fun arcade-style shooter. This one is also kind of in the vein of a House of the Dead, or it's not really a cover shooter. It's probably more so House of the Dead than any other arcade-style game. But it has the atmosphere of Zombieland. It's got sound-alike voice actors for the actors, so you're actually interacting with the characters that were in the movie series for Zombieland. It's $10.99, 45% off. If you're a leaderboard competitive gamer, it's got a fantastic leaderboard system and some different rewards that you can get if you play it regularly. Otherwise, there's other games that I would pick up over Zombieland in this particular sale. Hand Physics Lab for $6.99, 30% off. Uses hand tracking pretty well. It's more of a hand tracking mini game style game than anything else. There's different puzzles, different mini games as part of it. I'm still not super into just hand tracking specific things. Again, it is what it says. It's a hand physics lab, so it's using your hands, physical interactions with virtual objects. I don't know. Not something that was really top on my list of things to purchase in virtual reality. The Exorcist Legion VR, if you're into horror, this is actually one of my favorite horror titles. It is 44% off, $13.99. It's an episodic game. They've given it many graphics updates over the years, and it's a scary one, for sure. In a supernatural horror kind of way, which is a little different than a lot of the other horror titles. It's not reliant specifically on jump scares as much as the atmosphere and the chills of that horror experience, if you will. Another Beat Saber game combo with the Queen music pack for $39.99. Again, lots of these Beat Saber combos Not going to touch on it any further than that. Stride is a game that's very similar in a lot of ways to a game called Mirror's Edge. It's a game that's also kind of never ending, meaning it's never really been finished. They've added multiplayer mode. They've added a bunch of different features, but they've also added a new game called Stride Fates, which adds some of the features that they originally promised as part of Stride. I don't know how I feel about that. It's 46% off for $7.99. It's kind of a good price point if you want that style of game, but I don't know if this is a game that's going to last forever, and I don't know necessarily if it's one that I would pick up as part of this sale. If you already own Moss and you haven't picked up Moss Book 2, $10.99, 45% off is a great deal. Again, those two are probably my favorite in the third-person, mostly gameplay titles that are available in VR. I would definitely pick up the first one, say a maybe on Book 2. Dark Sword is a fun, again, kind of melee combat game. This one is more of a tower ranking game where you go up levels of the tower, fight waves of combat. If you succeed, you go up to the next level of the tower. $14.99 for 40% off is a pretty good deal. The Scenic Thrills Pack, $43.99, 37% off, includes tennis esports, which I have not had any experience playing, real VR fishing, which is a very realistic looking environment fishing simulator, and carved snowboarding, which if you're a fan of games like 1080 snowboarding, this is made by, I believe, the same developers that made that game, but made for virtual reality. Again, I believe each of those titles are part of this sale separately. I don't know necessarily if I'd pick up this package. Of the games in this package that I would recommend, I'd probably recommend Real VR Fishing over the other two. One that continues to go on sale, even though it just came out, I believe, in October. One of my favorite, if not my favorite, dungeon crawler in virtual reality is Dungeons of Eternity. This game is fantastic, single player or multiplayer. I think a lot of people don't like it single player, but they are actually actively working on adding more of a single player campaign to Dungeons of Eternity. This one is great. It is a loot gatherer. You can customize your character. You can get better weapons, get better armor as you play through the game. And it's mostly endless because the levels are procedurally generated outside of the first couple of tutorial levels. It's fantastic. $19.99 is a great deal for 33% off. It's got a Quest 3 graphics update as well, if that's something that you're into. Great game. Move and Groove, I'd pick up one of the two titles from this package. We've already talked about both of the titles, Outta Hand and Samba de Amigo. Samba de Amigo is a must-buy in my case. Outta Hand, not so much. Cookout for $8.99, 55% off. This one's fun. It's kind of a party game, but you need multiple people and multiple headsets to play it. I would probably pass, but it's fun, particularly for children or teenagers to play. Golf Plus, again, kind of more of a simulator than an arcade-style game. $19.99 is a fantastic price point, 33% off. If you're into golf, this will actually potentially make you a better golfer. It's got a mixed reality mode. It's got mini putt. It's got putting ranges. It's got all kinds of cool, driving ranges. It's got all kinds of cool golf mechanics, and you can purchase more courses based on realistic golf courses as well. So you can learn how to play Pebble Beach and then go golf at Pebble Beach and maybe play a better round than you had if you'd been there before. Hellsweeper VR did not grab me. I think primarily because I got stuck in the tutorial pre-release, and let's face it, it's just not really my kind of game. It is 23% off at $22.99. It's traveling through hell, melee combat, magic stuff kind of game. Didn't really grab me, unfortunately. Drop Dead the Cabin is a ridiculously difficult zombie wave shooter. They did recently add a mixed reality update that has the zombies coming at you from different points, either real or virtual windows and doors in your home. Because of the difficulty and because it's a zombie shooter, it's not one that I would necessarily pick up, but if you want that kind of mixed reality experience, or if you want a really challenging zombie shooter, Drop Dead the Cabin, $16.99, 32% off. Larcenauts could have been a contender. It's not. I would not pick it up even at 50% off. There's not really a player base. It's a multiplayer game similar to Overwatch in a lot of ways. Even at $14.99, it's one I would stay away from, unfortunately. DieSim is a God simulator, 33% off, $9.99. Not necessarily the best God simulator that you can play in VR, but it's an interesting title. I'm not going to discount it, but it's not one that I would necessarily pick up. Survivorman VR, The Descent, I have not played. If you're a fan of Survivorman, you might want to check it out, but it doesn't look that promising, even at $12.99 and 35% off. Elven Assassin is a classic bow and arrow game. There are other bow and arrow games at this point that do more than just bow and arrow. 40% off, $11.99. It's a fun game if you just want that experience, but otherwise, there's probably better games on this list to pick up instead. Gun Club VR, similar. You're shooting a bunch of guns on a gun range. Not a whole lot more to it than that. It's $10.99 at 45% off. If you want a racket sport that has you moving around a bit, and you have the space, mind you, to play it, Racket Nx is a lot of fun. It's 45% off at $10.99. Fruit Ninja 2, I would probably pass on. I would probably pick up Fruit Ninja 1, but Fruit Ninja 2 is 40% off at $14.99. It expands Fruit Ninja out to bow and arrow and other mechanics. It just didn't pull me in like the first game and the classic swinging of the first game did. The Family Time Bundle, which includes Toss, Shaven Stuff, and Walkabout Mini Golf, is 37% off, or $30.99. One or two of those titles I might recommend. Toss I probably wouldn't. So I'd probably recommend breaking up that bundle if you were going to. Ancient Dungeon is a fantastic dungeon crawler, and prior to Dungeons of Eternity, I would have said it's my favorite dungeon crawler in virtual reality. It's a lot of fun, $13.99, 30% off. It does not necessarily have the it doesn't have the multiplayer interactions, and it doesn't necessarily have the graphics of Dungeons of Eternity, but it's really cool. If you're looking for a second dungeon crawler this holiday season, 30% off is a pretty good deal for this game, and it's a lot of fun. Another Beat Saber pack, this time with the Rolling Stones, $39.99 again. Contractors, another shooter, first person, popular amongst people that like first person shooters, not something that's my thing, 25% off, $14.99. The classic Job Simulator, one of those classic titles that I've been talking about this whole time, $15.99, 20% off. That one I would add to my recommendations pile for sure. Waltz of the Wizard is a game that continues to add additional interactive elements. There's not a whole lot of gameplay loop to it. There's a lot of small experiences throughout it, but every time a new feature is added, like there's mixed reality in it, there's hand tracking in it. Every time there's new features added to a headset, they're one of the first titles that experiments with those new features. So if you're into experimental kind of tech demo sandbox style game, Waltz of the Wizard is a fun, magical experience for $12.99, 35% off. I have not played Pickleball One. It is 20% off for $19.99. Again, of the racket titles, I would recommend Racket Club, which I don't know is on sale yet. That is by the folks at Resolution and is a fantastic gameplay loop. Virtual reality is a lot of fun. It's a little bit of a shorter experience, but it's a silly experience for 40% off for $8.99. Death Horizon Reloaded, again, zombie shooter, not my kind of thing, $11.99, 40% off. Mother Gunship Forge is a almost bullet hell shooter, roguelike. It's somewhat unique. And again, a game that constantly evolves because the levels are procedurally generated. 45% off, $10.99. Demeo Battles, I prefer the first game, Demeo, but if you want to play Demeo head-to-head with someone else, Demeo Battles is the way to go. It's 20% off for $15.99. Again, it's got the similar mixed reality and virtual reality style tabletop RPG gameplay. I just feel like the original game with its modules and kind of in-game dungeon master just makes me feel like that's the gameplay loop that I want to play for that type of game. I will say, though, that Demeo Battles, because of the shorter, faster pace of the game, is a game that you can pick up, drop in, play for 20 minutes or so, and be done, whereas Demeo campaign levels can take up to 3 or 4 hours. Surgeoneer, I haven't played, and maybe I should. It is a silly surgical game, not really a simulation at all, for 20% off, $7.99, currently on the sale. Down the Rabbit Hole is another kind of diorama-style game. Again, I would recommend the Moss series for that style of game, but if you already have both of those games, this one is $11.99, 40% off, based a bit on the Alice in Wonderland tale. We talked a little about Warplanes earlier. This is, I believe, the first Warplanes game, WW1 Fighters. It's 45% off for $10.99. First-person tennis, the real tennis simulator, 21% off, $17.99. Again, the racket game I'd play would be Racket Club. Blockbuster Action, this is 3 of those shooters collected together. One I wouldn't be buying, but it's Contractors, Breachers, and Zero Caliber for $47.99. MarineVerse Cup, if you want to learn sailing and you want to go racing as well with friends, this one is cool. This particular developer has been making these yacht racing or boat racing games for a very long time. They're both instructional and close to the experience you'd have in the real world, but also a lot of fun. This one's $11.99, 40% off. If you want to learn how to sail, one that I would definitely consider picking up. Knock Bow and Arrow Soccer is exactly what it says. It's kind of like Rocket League, but with bows and arrows instead of cars. 40% off, $5.99. Barbaria is a very physical combat game. It's a lot of fun. Not one I would necessarily recommend unless you have a lot of space. Again, physics-based, physical title, 45% off, $10.99. Another Beat Saber pack, this time with the electronic mixtape, 19% off, $39.99. The Challenging Beats collection includes Pistol Whip, Synth Riders, and Ragnarok. All good rhythm games, but again, from a rhythm game perspective, I would pick up Samba de Amigo first, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the other titles as we get to them individually in this very lengthy sale. Sniper Elite VR, $15.99, 46% off. Not a game I would pick up, unfortunately. Sniper Elite doesn't give you much outside of aiming for a crotch to shoot in VR that's really anything. And the gameplay mechanics can make you sick because you're basically using bullet view as you shoot the bullets, and it's kind of a jarring effect. So I wouldn't pick that one up. If you want a billiards game, ForeVR Pool is fantastic. They've recently added a mixed reality mode as well. 40% off, $11.99. Ruins Magus. If you want a Japanese-style RPG, not only is this game beautiful, it is a ton of fun. It's also kind of a dungeon crawler, but in its unique JRPG style. 45% off, $18.99. I love this game. It's one that I would definitely look into. I got to add it to my recommendations pile for this particular sale. It's a great game, and it's a special one. Real VR Fishing. If you're into fishing, if you're into angling, if you want to just chill out in a beautiful environment, $13.99, 30% off. What the Bat for some people, the video game of the year in VR in 2022. I really like the What the games. What the Golf was the first one that came out. What the Car is out now. What the Bat came in between. What the Bat is the only one that's in VR, and that's what gives it an edge. Your arms are 2 baseball bats, and you have to use them to solve a bunch of puzzles. I like this one. It's a fun experience. It's not the longest experience on Earth. It's quirky. It's silly. It's 40% off at $14.99. The Hand-Tracked Adventures Pack. I can't say that I would recommend all 3 titles, so we're going to skip that one for right now, and we'll talk about the titles individually as we go. Skybox VR Player is literally just a video player for VR, 30% off at $6.99. While it's compatible with a lot of formats, I'm not necessarily sure that it's something that I would recommend. I'm also not someone that uses my VR headset for a lot of video content. Bone Lab is another physics game, sandbox style. There's a game to it, but most of it is mods at this point. It is $31.99, 20% off. Not one I would necessarily recommend, particularly if you're new to virtual reality. Pinball FX VR is fun, but I would recommend the Star Wars Pinball VR instead. This one is 53% off at $6.99. The Light Brigade is one of my favorite roguelike titles in virtual reality, and one of the games that I would say is best in class for 2023 as well. 32% off. They continue to add lots of new features. They recently added a mixed reality update. They also previously added graphics updates for both Quest Pro and Quest 3. Continuing to iterate, continuing to add to this game. $16.99 is a pretty great deal if you're looking for a roguelike game. It's one of the best. There's one other one in here that I would recommend over it, unfortunately, and I will explain when I get to it, but this one is 32% off. Cooking Simulator VR was also, coincidentally, someone's VR game of the year last year. It's $16.99. I didn't care for it for 32% off. Pistol Whip, if you want to be John Wick in VR, this is the way to do it. It's a rhythm shooter, but the scenes in this game are so well done, it makes you feel like you're an action star. It's $17.99. It's 40% off. They've got so much content in this game, I can't say not to pick it up. Even though I've got a rhythm game already in the recommendations, because of the action shooter parts of this game, I would also add this to my recommended pile with Pistol Whip. Blockbuster has you as a giant kaiju wreaking havoc on bunches of cities. That's my kind of game. Probably not everyone's kind of game. It's 40% off at $11.99. It's a great stress reliever, but there's not a whole lot to it. One I would pass on, Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghost Lord. Again, if you're looking for this style of game where you're playing in a co-op style multiplayer shooter game, I would recommend After the Fall. Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghost Lord, while it has the Ghostbusters license, didn't really feel like a Ghostbusters game. It felt like After the Fall with a Ghostbusters skin. Stride Fates, similar to Stride. Not really sure if I would endorse it. Again, kind of a Mirror's Edge style parkour shooter style gameplay. $20.99, 30% off. If you want a unique game and you have a little bit of space, this only takes really 9 steps of space. If you have the ability to step once in front of you, step once behind you, step to the left and right in like a square block of 9 blocks, 9 total steps. Eye of the Temple is a unique, very physical, almost natural locomotion game where you're basically Indiana Jones going through a temple. I love this game. And for $12.99, it is a steal. It is 35% off. In the event that you have that amount of space, heartily endorse it. Definitely recommend picking it up. If you're looking to learn oil painting and you don't want to invest in canvases and oil paints, and maybe you want to watch a video and follow along with Bob Ross, or if you want to watch any other video to follow along with or use as a environment to inspire your creativity, Vermilion is an awesome painting simulator. I don't know how the developer behind this title made such a beautiful title, They recently added a paint by numbers mode. There's a mixed reality mode. There's a multiplayer. There's so much in this paintbrush on a canvas with a palette and an easel game. If you are into art, you can even have your canvases printed from this. It's a fantastic title. Not for everyone, but again, if you want to learn how to use oil paints, this is a great title to pick up. A Night in the Attic is a charming game where you're kind of a marble character rolling around a endless labyrinth of sorts. It's really cool. It's got a unique gameplay loop. It's only $6.99, 30% off. Again, not necessarily the title I would pick up, but one that is a lot of fun if you're looking for something a little bit different and it's not doesn't have a whole lot of depth to it. Pixel Rip 1978, I want to caveat in that it's an Atari game that I did some voice acting in, and it's the third game in a series of games that I absolutely love. I am 100% biased. The Pixel Rip series are some of my favorites. This one takes you into the era of the Atari 2600 for part of it and kind of the Nintendo 64 era for the other parts of it. It also goes through the story of Atari in its like alternate universe, including the landfill, including the start of Atari, including the offices of Atari. So it's a huge nostalgia trip for me. I'm honored to be part of this game. So because of my bias, I don't want to add it to my recommended pile, but I recommend it. It's really cool. But it's also the third game in a series. So I would pick up Pixel Rip 1995 and also Pixel Rip 1989, the expansion on Quest, to Pixel Rip 1995 before I pick up this particular title. But if you're looking for a brand new VR Atari game, this is it. This is the only one that's available today. Pixel Rip 1978, 40% off at $14.99. Ragnarok is another rhythm game, kind of drummy game. Didn't really grab me as it has others. It's a fun, not the best graphics, but great gameplay loop game if you're into like bashing drums with mallets. 36% off, $15.99. Again, not one I would necessarily recommend as part of the sale. I Expect You to Die 3 Cog in the Machine, the most recent title in that series. We talked about the I Expect You to Die series. It's $19.99, 20% off. Painting VR, similar in a lot of ways to Vermilion. I liked Vermilion more. This one is 35% off, $12.99. Super Hot VR by itself is $14.99, 40% off. Again, best in class, great deal. This Walking Dead pack includes both The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners, and Chapter 2, Retribution. I didn't care so much for the second game, but if you want both, you can pick up both together for 50% off, $39.99. Another Beat Saber pack, this time with the Billie Eilish music pack, again, $39.99. A Township Tale is a multiplayer game that doesn't really have that much of a multiplayer player base at this point, unfortunately. It's cool because it's cooperative kind of city building and adventure, but it unfortunately doesn't have the player base, and some of the mechanics are a little rough for 30% off or $6.99. Acron Attack of the Squirrels is another multiplayer title that doesn't necessarily need multiple VR headsets. You play as a tree in VR, and the squirrels play on mobile devices. So one game purchase gets you the VR version, and then players on their mobile device would be able to be the squirrels for free alongside you. So great party game in VR, 30% off, $13.99. Swarm is fun, but it's one that could, again, make you a bit motion sick because of the way that it's paced. Again, it's almost like Spider-Man style mechanics where you're swinging off of tethers. I would prefer Yupitergrad over this one. It's 32% off or $16.99. Arizona Sunshine is a classic zombie shooter. Of the zombie shooters here, this might be the one that I would pick up. It's 45% off at $21.99. Last Labyrinth, it feels like a PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 3 game. You're guiding a person in a wheelchair through a bunch of tricky puzzle escape rooms or death for $19.99, 33% off. Not necessarily the best VR title, but if you're into that kind of creepy mood, classic PlayStation 2 or 3 graphic style game, this one is a pretty cool title. Pillow, I'm covering in a few days actually on the channel. This one didn't grab me as much as I thought it would. It's by Lucas Risotto, who previously made Where Thoughts Go. This one is $6.99, 30% off, and its unique claim to fame is it's a mixed reality game where you lie down in your Quest 3 device. It is also compatible with Quest 2 and Quest Pro. Floor Plan 2 is the sequel to Floor Plan Remastered. I would pick up Floor Plan Remastered over this one for a number of reasons, but also because the price is much less expensive. If you've already got Floor Plan 2 for 33% off is a pretty decent deal, but probably not one I would pick up as part of this sale at $19.99. Cubism, fantastic puzzle game. Also one that continues to iterate as new features are added to VR headsets. This one's $5.99, 40% off. Peaky Blinders, The King's Ransom is an okay game. Wouldn't say it's the best game. If you're a fan of Peaky Blinders, the series, it might be one you want to pick up. It's 15% off. Again, not a substantial savings at $16.99. Power Beats VR is another rhythm game, not one that I would recommend. It's 34% off or $14.99. Snow Wars I haven't played yet. It's kind of a snowball fight style game. It's 50% off, $9.99. Crazy Kung Fu. Yeah, it's Crazy Kung Fu. In virtual reality, $7.99, 46% off. Again, not one I would necessarily recommend. A beautiful anime-inspired game, Sushi Ben, 40% off, $14.99. One I would add to my recommendations. Nature Treks VR, kind of a walking simulator. A lot of beautiful places to visit. Not a whole lot more. $5.99, 40% off. Medal of Honor Above and Beyond could have been a contender, but wasn't. $26.99, 32% off. The Friendly Competition Pack, which includes 3 sports-style games, $49.49, 38% off. The Climb, the first game in that series, $18.99, 36% off. These are all kind of ones that I wouldn't necessarily recommend for that row. If you want to play an MMO, the one I would pick up in virtual reality at this point is Zenith: The Last City. I've got hundreds of hours in this game. It is fantastic. I love the gameplay loop through the story. They've added a bunch of endgame content. They've added like Pokemon monster bug collecting style mini games. There's a lot of stuff, and this game continues to get more and more expansions. $15.99 is a fantastic deal. This is one I'd add to my recommendations, 46% off. Another one I will add to my recommendations immediately is Walkabout Mini Golf. This is the best social interaction you can get. It also works if you have multiple headsets with the same account, which is kind of unique. You don't get that with a lot of games. 40% off, $8.99. I'm going to say pass on NFL Pro Era 2. Didn't really care for it as a football game. Again, this is American football, not soccer football. 30% off, $20.99. I would only pick this up if you loved the first NFL Pro Era and want to play multiplayer against someone else. Otherwise, I would definitely say skip this one. The Fitness Fun Bundle, again, 3 other games that are in the rest of the sale. The only one I haven't talked about so far is 2MD Football. I'd pick that up over NFL Pro Era, to be honest. Beat Saber plus Lady Gaga pack, same thing, different package. Sports Scramble, it was a good intro to the Quest 2. $18.99, 36% off, but it's not something I would definitely recommend. Golf 5, I would pick up Golf Plus in its place. It's $18.99, 36% off. Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2 Retribution we already discussed. That's $23.99, 40% off. I'd pick up the first game over the second one. Sweet Surrender is another fun roguelike game. Unfortunately, I've already recommended one of those. This one's 40% off, $14.99. Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge. Not my favorite Star Wars title. It does have a lot of cool play mechanics, but it doesn't really make me feel like I'm part of the Star Wars universe. It makes me feel like Star Wars characters are part of this game's universe, if that makes sense. It's 32% off for $16.99. If you love Among Us VR is a lot of fun. It's $6.99. 30% off. Shaven Stuff is a fun one where you're basically working in a barber shop. 40% off, $8.99. Bartender VR Simulator, I haven't really played a lot of. I'm not really into bartending. I don't drink. But people really love this one. It's $11.99 or 40% off. The Room VR, A Dark Matter. There's a lot of really good escape room VR titles. I think I'd still go Seventh Guest first. Then I'd go I Expect You to Die. Then I'd go The Room VR. It's a great game, but there's so many great escape room titles in VR that this one ranks a little bit lower for me over under some of the other titles I've already described. IB Cricket is the only cricket title I believe in this sale. If you love cricket, it's fun. If you don't know what cricket is, you can learn the sport a bit by playing it. It's 23% off, $22.99. I'm not super huge on sports titles, but again, it's probably the best cricket experience you can get in virtual reality today. Hello Neighbor Search and Rescue. If you love the Hello Neighbor series, this is a good extension of it in virtual reality. It's got some stealth mechanics to it. It's got some puzzle mechanics to it. It isn't really one that I would pick up as part of the sale as a thumbs up recommendation, but it is one that is, like, especially if you're a fan of the Hello Neighbor series, at that price point is a great deal. The boxing game that I would pick up from this particular sale is Creed Rise to Glory Championship Edition, $18.99, 36% off. It feels like you're part of a Rocky movie or a Creed movie. Very arcade-style boxing action as opposed to simulated boxing action, so you're not learning how to box so much as expending energy, punching, and trying to hit specific spots. It's more like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out than anything else, with some other recovery mechanics and things of that nature that are unique to virtual reality. Les Mills Body Combat, on the other hand, is more of a physical training simulator. It's cool because it doesn't require you to have a license, and it's got actual training coming from actual Les Mills trainers. That one's $19.99, 33% off. Carly and the Reaper Man is a cool two-player game where one person plays in VR and the other is outside of VR controlling a player that kind of to you is a third person. You can also play it one player. It's 50% off at $9.99. If you've got a player two, I'd add it to the consider pile. I didn't care so much for Jurassic World Aftermath. It originally came out in two parts. The first part was okay. The second part was a little bit better. If you're a big fan of Jurassic World, it's a game that extends that story a bit and kind of connects it more to the original Jurassic Park series. But I didn't really care so much for the stealth action of it, nor did I really care so much for the graphic style of it. It didn't feel so much like a Jurassic Park, Jurassic World game, unfortunately. I love the fact that the developers took a chance on it, but it's not really one for me. If you love Angry Birds VR Isle of Pigs, $11.99, 40% off. Not much more to say than if you love Angry Birds, you're going to love it just as much in virtual reality. A game I have played a ton of already and that recently came out, and I'm surprised to see in the sale, is Power Wash Simulator VR, 20% off, $19.99. Robo Recall Unplugged. There's a lot of games that do shooting better at this point, but if you just want a frenetic wave shooter, can't really go wrong with this one, 36% off, $18.99. I don't like spiders, and you should kill it with fire. Kill it with fire VR is 33% off, $9.99. I don't like spiders enough to also not recommend that particular title. Gorn, again, if you've got a lot of physical space, is a fun gladiator arena melee combat game. It's also a classic VR title at this point, $14.99, 25% off. A roguelike adventure unlike any other, a game I've got tons and tons of hours in Death Unchained. This game has seasons of content and leaderboard action and loads of expansions. I love this one. It's a bow and arrow combat game. I prefer the crossbow because it's a little bit easier. You don't have to pull your arm back, and I'm lazy. Great game. 40% off, $17.99. I will add this to my recommended pile. If you want to learn a foreign language, rather than Mondly and some of the other alternatives out there, I would recommend Nountown Language Learning. This one's 25% off, $14.99. It teaches you languages initially through picking up objects in different rooms and different environments, and then stringing those together in the storyline conversations with characters throughout the game. It's a very cool language learning tool. Again, another one I'm shocked to already see on sale, Assassin's Creed Nexus VR, 20% off, $31.99. If you want to play an authentic, full-fledged Assassin's Creed game in virtual reality, this is the way to go. Great gameplay loop, adds to the Assassin's Creed universe, and feels like an Assassin's Creed game in virtual reality. Another mixed reality bundle here. We've got Knockout League, which is another boxing game that's part of this sale. Drop Dead the Cabin and Broken Edge. Please Don't Touch Anything, 40% off, $5.99. Not the best of the escape room puzzle games. If it was, I would definitely recommend it. Resident Evil 4, similar to Assassin's Creed. If you're into Resident Evil games, it's a no-brainer. If you're not, probably don't want to pick it up. It's 40% off, $23.99. Budget Cuts Ultimate is a classic. This one includes both Budget Cuts and Budget Cuts 2, $20.99, 30% off. I've already recommended Samba de Amigo Virtual Party. This one's the deluxe edition. It's $25.99, 34% off. It does add some of that DLC content and some additional skins and things of that nature. So that's why it's a bit more expensive. Swordsman is, if you're going to pick up one of those physics-based, almost sandbox-style melee combat games, this is the one I would recommend. Again, not really my style of game, but it's the best of the bunch, in my opinion. It's 35% off, $12.99. Vader Immortal, a Star Wars VR series, is a 3-part story where you're basically like Vader's unwilling apprentice, told in between different films of the Star Wars series. It's $20.99, 29% off. Again, of the Star Wars titles, I would probably pick up the Star Wars Pinball VR as a recommendation, and the others are there if you want to check them out. This one feels more like a Star Wars game than Tales from the Galaxy's Edge because you're part of a story that includes Darth Vader, and it's more Jedi elements, including lightsaber dojo and things of that nature. But I don't think it's a heck yes, if that makes sense. Virtuoso is a music-making application. It's kind of fun. You can make your own instruments and then play them and compose and just play music for 50% off or $9.99. Synth Riders is another great rhythm game. Only because I've already recommended Samba de Amigo does it fall a little bit to the wayside, but 40% off, $14.99. Great title. One that if you love rhythm games, I would definitely check out. Espire 2, among the 2 Espire games, because of their mixed reality missions update, kind of like the Metal Gear Solid VR missions back in the day. 40% off, $17.99. I'd recommend this over Espire 1 because of that mixed reality content, but if you're picking up a Quest 2 and not a Quest 3, I would pick up Espire 1 instead. Call of the Sea VR is fun. It's got a great story, but it doesn't necessarily feel like a VR game. It feels like a flat game that added VR elements. It is a port of a flat game, which makes sense, but it isn't as immersive as I would like. 45% off, $10.99. Great story, not necessarily the best VR implementation. We've already talked about the Artful Creations bundle. Hollow Point is another bow and arrow game. Bow and arrow games I would pick up in Death Unchained. Hollow Point is 53% off, $6.99. It's going to sound silly, but one of my favorite relaxation titles is National Geographic Explorer VR, which is literally just visiting Antarctica and Machu Picchu. That's the only things you can do. You can take pictures, you can do a little bit of kayaking, you can do a little bit of hiking. That's about it. But I love it. I don't necessarily know why. It's also one of my most popular videos on the channel. $5.99, 40% off. Not a must-buy, but one that you might want to check out. Propagation Paradise Hotel. Hey, guess what? It's another zombie shooter, survival horror game. It's $11.99, 40% off. Not one I'd necessarily recommend. 2MD VR Football. If you're looking for an American football game, this is the one I would pick up. It's $9.99, 33% off. Lots of fun. Doesn't have the official NFL licenses, but is a very fun arcade-style football game. Crisis Brigade 2 is like Time Crisis, but in virtual reality. It's also ridiculously hard. 33% off, $9.99. If you like that style of game, thumbs up, I would pick that up. I'm not into that style of game so much, so it's not going into my recommendations pile. Garden of the Sea, however, which is kind of like a relaxing, chill Animal Crossing style game where you're building a garden and attracting animals and solving puzzles. I really love this game. It's $16.99, 32% off. It's a really good deal at that price point as well. I'm going to add that to our recommendations on this sale. Kartoffel is a puzzler that's in a lot of ways similar to Lemmings. Not entirely, but it's kind of that same kind of gameplay mechanic. They've recently added mixed reality modes to the game, so if you've got a Quest 3 and a Quest Pro with that full color pass-through, this is one that you might want to check out, particularly if you like that Lemming-style puzzle game. I will say it's not on the Quest platform, but my favorite VR Lemming-style game is a game called Humanity. It's my 2023 VR Game of the Year, actually. It's unfortunately not on Quest yet, but if you have a PlayStation VR 2, or access to a PC that can run VR, you can run it even on the Quest 2, Quest Pro, or Quest 3. Humanity is a great game, one that I would pick up. Lost Recipes, 40% off, $5.99. It's a very short gameplay loop, but it can actually teach you to cook some really cool ancient recipes. Fruit Ninja, $7.49, 50% off. If you've played Fruit Ninja, you know what this is. If you haven't, you might want to check it out. I think there's even a demo available on the Quest store, so you might want to check out the demo first. Arcade Legend has you building your own arcade. It's $13.99, 44% off. You can build the arcade and then play the machines, which is a lot of fun. You can also, I believe, invite other multiplayer users into the arcades at this point. And they're continuing to expand, adding more machines and more environments for your arcade as time goes on. So it's not a game that's just dead and not getting further development. It's getting a lot of love. And then I Expect You to Die Again. The first one is the one I'd recommend in this series. If you've played none of them, it's $15.99 at 36% off. So loads of games. I have no idea how long I've been talking, but it feels like it's been hours. Pick up something cool this holiday season if you're into VR. If you're new to VR, welcome. Enjoy exploring many virtual worlds. Hope this video was helpful, gives you a take of each of the games and the headsets as part of this sale. If you're going to pick up a headset at this point and you're new to VR, I do highly recommend the Quest 2 still. It's got a lot of game still available to it. It's going to be around for a while, and it's a great deal at the $249.99 price point. I would say, though, because of the size of some of the bigger games right now, the $299.99 256 gigabyte model is kind of the sweet spot. And if you're looking for the best in class right now, you want to go with the Quest 3 And if you're looking for something with the best social interactions, including facial and eye tracking, you want to consider the $999 Quest Pro. I'll be back with more content soon. Until next time, get out there and enjoy some VR for yourself, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye now.